you know, how I got into throwing, I suppose, not only did I have a good father to help in athletics, it was that I was always throwing things, you know. I mean, probably got into trouble with the local police, local attendants on the seafront, because I was always throwing stones in the sea, how far I could throw them. And when I was a young chap, I can always remember people who still remember me, I suppose, when I was in Felixstowe. I was the only one who could throw a stone the long distance to the Felixstowe dock to hit these gas sort of supports. And they didn't believe it till they heard a little noise going bing, and so they used to come with a booty of cigarettes and liquor. So I was a very popular man amongst the dockers in Felixstowe at the time. They used to say, do you think this young chap could throw a stone to hit that tank across there? And they said, never. So they said, well, so many cigarettes, I bet he can. So they said no, but in the end they were so happy because they came away with like a half a load of the ship, if you like, with the booty, because I could do it. So I knew then I had the talent to throw things. I threw when the school was open, or the Coronation Drive in Felixstowe open, by His Majesty the Duke of Edinburgh. I was there and I threw the discus. I didn't win it, I came fourth, but just to say that, I threw under some royalty to watch me throw, and I think that started. But javelin was my main event, but then I got elbow trouble, like tennis elbow. And then I thought my athletics career was finished, but my father would say, you can throw anything, let's try the discus. But I said, you had to be a big chap to throw the discus, so, but that's another story. My father was the coach and the leader, and looking back, you have to laugh, because you couldn't say, I've got homework to do first. It wouldn't be a priority. If he was ready to coach, you would have to go to one of the roads, or find a bit of grass to throw. And to give you an example, when we first moved to Ipswich from Felixstowe, we used to use the Ransom Sims Road Jeffreys path, or the little road, and we draw with chalk, put a little circle, and unfortunately when you threw the implement, it landed in like 3 foot of grass, you know, and you would sort of lose the implement. You get very frustrated, but my father would say, well, this is good stuff, this is good training, because it's keeping you calm under pressure. We used to have a book that you could flick, you know, and as it flicked, you could show the discus technique. And so we didn't have like all the videos and what they have today. And you could see the person throwing the discus, which was very, very good. That was my study, not doing my O-levels or A-levels. You read this and look at this all the time. And the other one was a book by Tony Nett. It was on conditioning, a German book that my father had going back in the early 60s. And it was all about various exercises that you could do. So interesting that today, people still think if you had these exercises, this is what's got to be happening now, 40 odd years ago. So he was really in advance of what sports science or what conditioning was. So it was little books that Germans would use, because they were very good technically, very good in conditioning all those years ago. So my father was a great believer, this is what you've got to learn. So that was my 1 hour's preparation every so often, looking at all the techniques and then to try to rehearse it. Then on weight training, he used to take us to the Ipswich airport, for example, which looking now is asbestos filled. And my mother used to get all worried, but that was the only place where we could train. Either that or in the back garden when the snow was there, etc. So we just had to do it. We didn't have the facilities. My father would improvise equipment. As I said, I could throw anything, so we'd have little shots, we'd have a little sort of discus or discoy, javelins, but they weren't the best. But it's only later on, the track suits, I thought the shoes. I used to wear shoes, you know, because my father would say, for example, I want you to do this technique and you've got to do it 100 times. Well, on the left foot where you turn or spin, they used to have little holes, you know, I'd go in, then you put newspaper in to make sure, you know, all these things. I'll give you a lovely comment of my late father, which probably just holds you what a man it was. I broke a British record. I broke 19 in my time, which is quite an achievement. I remember breaking one, and we were at the White City when a number of people said to him, "Are you proud, Mr. Tancred, that your son Bill has just broken a British record?" And he says, "No." They said, "No, why is that?" He said, "He can do better." So I always had that behind me, he can do better. But you have to laugh at it now, don't you? But that's the character of the man. Ipswich Harriers, wonderful club for a young aspiring athlete, and we used to train. My father worked in Ipswich, and during his lunch break or during the evening we had to go to the Ipswich Town training ground, which is they use now, but that was an area which we used for Ipswich Harriers. because there was no sort of fields as such, there was no concrete circles, but we used to train there. So Ipswich Harriers was a good club. It gave you the opportunities for competition within the county and also eastern counties, and then gradually other national sort of clubs. So it was a good start. You represent your county, and you compete in the eastern counties, and it's like a ladder, and you're trying to achieve things, and then to get your first international vest for Great Britain, which for me it was 1964, Great Britain against the Benelux countries in Ghent. To think that you've got a lovely international vest, and then you're paid to go to catch a plane, to live in a nice hotel, to compete, and then come back. And it was just like, well, not winning the pools. To me, it was such an achievement. But I've been going abroad. The pinnacle of being of an athlete is to compete at the Olympic Games. You know, you can compete at the Commonwealth Games for England, you can compete at the European Championships. But to get those 5 rings forever, like this tie I'm wearing here, what an honour. So you wait, and when you do fairly well, you're hoping you're selected. And when this letter comes, and it's signed by the Duke of Edinburgh, Philip, that you've been selected to represent Great Britain at the 1968 Olympics, it's just a wonderful achievement. And I was so elated, and I remember taking out, not my father, but I took my father, my mother, my friends, and my brothers and sisters for a meal to celebrate. I was that happy, and I just thought it was a wonderful honour. They can never take that away from you, and I think just to represent your country, the Olympic Games, is the highest you can do. So, wonderful honour. Well, it's so exciting that, you know, you left Britain, and you knew you were going to be away for about 6 to 8 weeks to get acclimatised. So it's the longest you've ever been away, and it's all just wonderful. I went for breakfast. I'd never seen so much food in my life coming from Ipswich, you know, and Suffolk, you know, always there. It was so good that I'd queue up again at 11:30 and go for lunch, you know. It was all bad because you put on weight, didn't you, which you didn't need to do, but no one sort of told us this was bad for you, etc. So the food was excellent, you know, and coming back home to tell my parents what I had, I think that was an inspiration for everyone to try and become Olympic athletes, because the food was fantastic. I can remember lots of steak, you know, lots of fruit, lots of vegetables, and you could just eat, and you just show your pass, and you can go and eat as much as you like. So that was the first sort of way in which I knew that to be a good sportsman, you need to have good nutrition. But it was just a great thing to be in the village, to see everyone, you know. And then when you talk about the events, well, from track and field, I saw Bob Beamon. He jumped 29 feet, 2.5, 8 meters, 90, unheard of. The record lasted 20 odd years. I saw the world records being broken, one after the other, in the triple jump. I saw a guy, they said, this guy jumps over a bar backwards. We all talk about Frosbury flop. I'd never seen this, a person going over backwards. And then you see him going into the arena, and instead of watching all the crowd watching, say, Jim Ryan running the run, they'd all say that someone's on the high jump, because you can tell by the sombreros moving from side to side that this guy was just going to jump. So it was all this happening. And then, of course, my biggest idol was Al Erter, the discus chap, and that he, although I didn't qualify, he actually won his 4th gold medal. So he got a gold medal for one of his daughters, each one of his daughters. But to see the great man himself, so it was just wonderful to come back, and that's so inspirational that when you come back home, although you haven't done as well yourself, and some people like Dave Hembry, who won the 400-meter hurdle, and I saw a gold medal, I've seen it, which is so exciting. It then gives you a chance to regroup, if you like, and then retrain, and then start to become a better athlete yourself. So it's a wonderful experience, and which you'll remember for the rest of your life, that you'd been there to Mexico City in the altitude. But also in the altitude, and seeing world records, you saw famous people, runners, not doing very well because the altitude finished them, and people perhaps who didn't have the techniques in steeplechase winning it, you know, because the Kenyans lived in altitude. So it was a bit of an unfair games, looking at from an event point of view, but looking because of the altitude situation. I didn't do as well as I perhaps should have done, but like everything else, you don't train with that in mind, really, but they would do now. For example, give me an example. You have 3 attempts to try to get the qualifying distance. So if you missed the first one, did a foul, or you didn't throw as well, you've got to wait nearly an hour for the other competitors before it's your turn again. And I was never used to waiting an hour, because I was all psyched up, trying to think I could throw, like on Ipswich Airport, I could throw a discus one after the other, do 30 throws, 40 throws in that 1 hour, so that was different. So I did, it was a learning, very good learning experience in which you could probably adapt to later on. So yeah, it wasn't very, but nice to say I went to the Olympic Games, I competed, it gave me an idea. But I didn't do well performance-wise, so a little bit disappointing, especially when all the ladies and friends said, come back with that medal, you know, so I let a lot of people down in some ways, you know, and it was disappointing. And you get over it very quickly, but it'll always be with you that you didn't do as well as you should have done. I feel I probably trained too hard when I look back, and perhaps been a bit more, again, better preparation. That it's no good doing it on a training field, you've got to do it in the arena, so you learn that way as well. But the years tick away that you don't have many years to do it. And that's why I admired Al Oerter, that he was never the world record holder, but every Olympic Games he won. He would be the first one to say, what do you think about, Bill, when you throw? And I'd be just like anyone else. I'm dreaming that the discus is gone, flowing away. It's a world record. I get on the rostrum and I get on there and I wave to the crowd as all the Union Jacks. And I said, well, don't you dream that? He says, no, I always dreamed this way. The wind conditions have suddenly changed. How do I adjust my technique? Or a rival who I didn't think was good enough suddenly breaks the Olympic record. How do I respond to that sort of stimulus? So he was really in sports psychology way ahead in '68, what we all know for a fact, that you got to prepare for anxiety control, performance control, etc., you know, and don't get too worried, and, you know, etc., etc. So he was supreme competitor, supreme. I was in the arena, and when they won their event, they marched on to receive their medals, and all of a sudden, you know, a hand would go up, the fist, it was the black power thing, and I just thought, well, maybe either they're cold, or I don't know, this must be a new style of whatever. I didn't know the implications. Of course, in the end, you knew what it was, and that was at the Olympics when that started. The better you got, you tend to have more sort of equipment in terms of tracksuits and shoes, but no finance at all, you know, not like today where you got lottery funding and whatever. But I was happy about that because I was so grateful that someone had showed me this is a nice tracksuit, and I'm suddenly looking very smart again, you know, with the 3 stripes and whatever, so that was good fun. I happened to break the British record in the 3A's Championships 1972. And as a pride, it wasn't a finance, it was a wind sheeter type. And it was sponsored by Nationwide, so it had to have Nationwide written on it. And the following week, I wore it with pride. And I was told, I was warming up, take that thing off, you're contravening the rules of the game. Take it off, you're going to be banned. And I said, but I got this last week for the 3A, take it off, you know. So they were very, very strict in what you did, what you wore, etc., etc. So yeah, strictly amateur, which is silly when you think it was a prize from the 3As from Nationwide at the time. I mean, I'll tell you a lovely story, but I'll probably get shot for this. When you used to have your travelling expenses, you know, you had to come from Ipswich to whatever, and I used to train from Penzance, you know, to get a little bit more money that way, but the whole team came from Penzance. So we'd probably get into trouble by nothing at all, really. It was only later on that they were a little bit more generous, but no, it was strictly an amateur, so it was the Amateur Athletic Association or the British Amateur Athletic Association, and I notice now that they've dropped the word amateur because they're all professionals, really, as such. I do remember getting paid by an official of the Adidas. I threw the discus, as I said, with the Adidas shoe, and I broke the British record, and so pleased were the promoters of Adidas, who said, I'm going to give you some money for this because you've earned it, and I'm going to put £20 in your pocket. And I said, I've never had a man put £20 in my pocket before. And it was so pleased when I pulled it out. I said, lads, what are you going to have to drink? And that was my first sort of professional image, if you like, but £20 note was put in my pocket. I think, you know, we are moving in the right direction. I think it's got to start in schools. I think schools do have a tough job, but in my event and in throwing, you need good technical excellence, and I think teachers perhaps need to be a bit more aware of what's involved in throwing. I know time is, but maybe then you should have coaches that come into schools to help. You should have a very good referral system linking up to good clubs like Ipswich Harriers and Bury Snedmans or wherever, and you have a little network of all the support services. So things are moving in the right direction, and we're hoping by 2012 you're going to have some discus throwers or shot putters and javelin throwers. You've got some good talent here who might make the team, and I'd be very, very pleased and very honoured to see that happen. So things are moving in the right direction. But you've got to keep their interest going. You've got to have a person like my late father who's always there on hand to help you and to encourage you. I just think it's you, it's inside, it's in you, isn't it? And like if God has given you some sort of attribute, you want to do your best, don't you? And sometimes you have distractions or you're not achieving and you have to try to prove yourself. And I think if you probably regret it later on that you only have a limited amount of years in which to have that perfection, because you know someone else is going to beat you eventually. You know, you don't stay at the top for so long. So you try very, very, very hard. And I think athletes and people who achieve in general are very good motivators inside, and that's what they want. They're very single-minded, and that's how they are in their personality makeup. And which, I wouldn't say I was mad really, it's just that I wanted to achieve and try to do my best at something which I was gifted in.